And we are live. Can you guys see us as well as hear us? Hi Mohammad Niaz, hi Munib, hi Minte. Hi Alberto. Can you guys confirm if you can see us and hear us? I will just turn light towards. I think this is better. Okay. Cool. I didn't get any confirmation. Maybe there is an issue. Can anyone confirm? Because we are live as far as the software goes. Yes, yes. Thanks for confirming, Lucky. Awesome. So yeah, what this special session, right? So usually there is a session on Wednesdays, but this session was specially planned after Safwan reached out to me regarding uh, like AI stuff he has been exploring in Frappe Framework, and that is why we are here, right? So if you have not seen any past live stream, go to buildwithhussain.dev. You will find a list of all the episodes there and more information about me as well as Build with Hussain. And there are links in the descriptions as well. Safwan's LinkedIn is linked down below, as well as my Twitter. And yeah, for old folks who have been joining ever since, good, welcome back. Yeah, over to you, Safwan. You can introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. As Hussein introduced, like we are going to talk about how we can use AI in Frappe ecosystem. So this is not going to be specifically about Frappe, but a lot of development tricks and ideas that we are going to explore could be actually transferred to any other technology that you're working on. And for people who are like really veteran developers who have been using ChatGPT for a while now, might be more pro than me. Like this is mostly targeted towards people who have not started exploring AI in their development workflow. And the reason I had this discussion with Hussein and some of the people around me was when we started having conversation among the community, among the developers, we saw a lot of people were not yet exploring or using these tools. Like, and sometimes they were taking like 2 to 3 days more than we would usually do after you can say like post chat gpt era, right? Like how fast we are developing, how the workflows have changed, is not reflected in many people's workflow. So I felt like there are still people who have not really seen the potential of how these tools can be used in their development workflow. I am from Tridz and I run a small development firm based out of Bangalore. We work mostly on in product development, but a large chunk of our development right now happens around Frappe ecosystem. Other technology that we work on has to do with development around AI models like stable diffusion and other LLMs like Llama 2, Falcon. And another open source tool that we have been very closely working with is Drupal. Before we discovered Frappe, for almost 10 years, we have been working on a platform called Drupal, another open source awesome project, but based on PHP. So that's all with my introduction. I think we will move on to the subject.
Yeah, yeah. I
Hussein,
will
you want to
switch
add
to.
something?
No, no. So I met Safwan first time in the conference last year, ERP Next conference. It was called then, and he also gave it a nice talk as well as a flash talk, I guess, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So you can check out it on Frappe channel if you want to. So I will just switch to Safwan's screen. Hopefully it is visible now, and we can start.
So I think before we move on to actually demonstrating how we could use ChatGPT, I'm going to give a very basic layman explanation of how ChatGPT works. So I believe a lot of people in this session might already know that, but I just want to be sure like others also have a pretty decent understanding of how things work. And this is not going to be very accurate. Like I'm not going to go into the technicals in detail, but I'll just try to explain how GPT kind of look for answers. And so to put it very simply, ChatGPT is not like a human being on the other side trying to answer your question. ChatGPT doesn't understand what you're asking. It doesn't understand what it's actually giving back to you. So this is one fundamental information that a lot of people lack. So ChatGPT is a very large language model, which has been trained with a huge number of data that's available on the public web, and it runs an algorithm. Statistically, it is able to predict and form sentences and give you back answers based on the pattern in your question. So basically, it doesn't understand what you're asking. It doesn't really understand what it's giving you back. So as I said, I'm not going to be very accurate here. I just want common people to understand. Like, so
Yeah, yeah.
why this is very important has to do with how you approach this tool, how you trust the answers, how you ask questions to this. So one common pattern that I have seen is like people ask very short questions without much context. So like, how can I create a form in Frappe, right? So this might return good answers, but then it could also give very, very wrong answers. Like it doesn't really understand your context. It might not be really sure about which framework, which version you are on. So if you try to break down this, what is happening here, what's mostly happening is it's trying to get an output generated from the words that you have given it, and that word basically just have create, form, and Frappe, which is kind of what is going to define the answers, right? So the kind of answer you got might be very, very, very basic, right? But if you try to rephrase it and say like, let's say, actually you don't even have to give a sentence. Like usually what I do is like I try to prime it with certain keywords first, Frappe framework. And if I'm using ERP next, I'll say ERP next. If I want it to be a web form, I give web form, and then whatever you want, right? And then you could then say like, I am trying to develop a solution on Frappe framework. You could actually even explain that it's a Python based framework and all those things. It kind of gives you a better accurate results. If the more keywords you give, the results are better. You could add the version of your Frappe that you're running and all those things, right? So let's say Frappe 14. Frappe version is 14. I need to create a doc type. So the reason I'm giving here doc type, if you say a form in Frappe, that could be a doc type, that could also be a web form that is created from the doc type, right? So here, Frappe, the previous answer there, it has already guessed or it has matched something else, right? So create a doc type with 3 fields, and then maybe you can go ahead and give the field names, right? Let's say like, let's say we want age of type. You can just give it anything like that, and then you can say
First name, last name, maybe. Yeah.
yeah, something like that. Designation of type data, and let's say date of type date. Name the form to have a confirmation on submit. Use script for confirming user. I'm just ending it here because this is not what we're going to actually use. We have real examples lined up. Now the kind of output that Frappe could give will be way better than the ones that it would give if you just ask a one-liner, right? Because you have given it enough cue, enough understanding of what it has to do, and then based on that it generates the request. So in certain scenarios, if you have primed it enough, what happens is like it gives output that you could actually follow step by step, copy paste the code, and it works, right? I have few examples that has been done in such a way. So the reason I was saying this is like it's almost like how our brain works. Like if you have read about how our brain works, we are primed on information that we need at the moment. The moment I'm sitting on my laptop, my brain is already primed to and has already brought in front the information that I need to operate this laptop. Also, it has brought the information that I should be aware of while talking on this subject, right? So the brain has very limited capacity in the conscious side, and then it's based on that context it operates, right? So when you're driving, even if you are distracted, sometimes you automatically applies the brake, right, without your conscious mind having to apply it. So same way, the questions that you ask, the keywords that appear in your questions primes the answers. So people who are better at asking questions get better results. So I keep telling this to other developers: if you're lazy in your initial prompt, you end up having a long conversation to get the answer, right? But if you're not lazy in
Exactly.
the initial prompt, then you get the best result, sometime even in the first prompt itself. So I'll just give you some long prompts that I have given where I have really wonderful results. So I think I'll directly jump into that first, then we'll go to smaller examples. So maybe it
Awesome.
might be an exciting case.
There is a question in
So
the chat. If you can take that, like
I don't
how?
have the chat.
No,
Yeah,
no. I will.
yes.
I will. Yeah. So how ChatGPT collects information? Is it collect from separate repository or from Google? From Google.
Yeah, so if you're running a free version of ChatGPT, it's actually having old data pre 2021, and it was trained with certain amount of data, and that's all it has access to. But if you have a plus plan, then you could actually allow ChatGPT to browse URLs, go and check out GitHub repositories, and then process data. We will be doing a live example of something from the Frappe framework source code in GitHub to show you from using a plus account. And I
Awesome.
usually suggest all developers to take a plus account, because in my experience, each time you use ChatGPT plus, you sometimes save days of time in development, right? And that could easily compensate the amount you're paying to ChatGPT, right? If you know how to use it. So I directly jump into an example that we have built completely using ChatGPT and the code that it has given. I'll just refresh this chat window right now. So this is a single doc type that was built in a Frappe. So this doesn't have ERP next in it. It's running on Frappe Cloud. So there is no app or anything. So I'll just quickly show you the single doc type. So it's called AI chat. And this thing, single doc type, has few fields. So this long text field is not used anymore. So you have an HTML field, you have a data field, which is called query. You have a button, send. Then you have a section break config, and in that you have something called system, which is again a data type. Then you have another section break row. Then you have a chat log, which is a long text, right? So it's pretty much a very basic single doc type. And
This is a custom one, right? So you have not created any custom app. It's just on the site.
it's on the side. It's not on the
Yeah.
side. There are no app or anything. It's just
Okay.
a
Custom doc type. Cool.
so custom doc type. So this is the query input field. There's actually an HTML field here, and you have a send button. So to explain what the solution is, think of it like a ChatGPT UI, a very basic ChatGPT UI, but which can be prompted to become anything from the UI itself. So without having to touch the code. So if you see here, you have a system config here. So here you could tell the ChatGPT or this particular AI chat to be anything. So for example, right now it's a you are helpful assistant, you help with coding. So let it be like that. So in this case, we'll just say, hey, I need help, and I'll click on send. So it's actually connected to GPT API, OpenAI API. So of course I'm here to help what you need assistance with. So let's say like how can I cache the output of my functions in Python, right? So it sometimes takes a lot of time for the GPT-4 APIs to respond. So then it gives you a response. So there's some improvement possibilities here. For example, it doesn't convert new line into line breaks. I think maybe we could do it live later. So you could have this conversation. So what's happening here is like, this is the system prompt here, right? And then it's actually going on with the conversation same like ChatGPT. So I'll just show you how you could change the whole chat scenario in a very without even touching the line of code. So let's change this. You are a unhelpful assistant. You will be sarcastic and will not answer any queries. Okay, so we are just changing how the text behave, and we have just changed the value in the data field here, the system field here, and let's see what happens. Hey, I need help, right? I'm glad you reached out to me. How can I not assist you today? I need help with my code. I need to cache functions for performance, right? So that's been earlier, but unfortunately I'm here to be unhelpful, so I won't be assisting you with that. Good luck though. So you could see how a very small single doc type and a small text box we have built a, let's call it any AI, right? So it can be any AI chat, right? You can just prompt this here and then it could do anything. And for the curious ones, basically the row is actually maintaining the chat history in JSON format. So for people who don't understand how ChatGPT or any other AI models generate continuous conversation, it doesn't actually do a continuous conversation. These are all predicting the next possible response. So in every request, you're sending the whole conversation. So now if I'm going to send something else again, please help me or something, it's not going to send please help me alone. It's going to send from the first, hey, I need help onwards till the end. So each time the language model, be it GPT-4 or be it Llama or any chat capable LLMs, they are basically predicting the next possible conversation, right? It's not actually having a conversation and responding to the last information, or it doesn't have any memory. It's mostly always completing the text, and as long as you end up using all the token limit, then it start losing context, because it start losing the initial part of the conversation. The first few chats will be slowly trimmed out. That's the reason ChatGPT Windows after a while starts losing context or start reducing the quality of the conversation, because the original prompt is no more in the context window, right? So I just wanted to show you how you could create something so simple using ChatGPT. But the prompt was not very easy. Like in this case, I'll just show you the prompt and I'll show you how you arrived at that prompt. So for example, this is the prompt, right? So here I have made certain decisions. So definitely I need to know how a chat conversation works, what all fields I will require and all those things. So if
are
don't
you
know that,
so this
yeah, please.
prompt basically
Yeah.
what was the purpose of it, to make the chat single doc type or
No. So I'll just come to that. So so in my case, I had pretty decent understanding how chat should be built, right? So if you don't know, the best possible way would be to have a chat window just for the ideation. Just say you want to build a chat using low code on Frappe Framework. You'll be using OpenAI APIs for this. Let's have a step-by-step discussion on what all fields will be required and how do I store the chat history and all those things, and then arrive at an architecture like how we arrived at here. So in this case, we decided we will have these fields, right? So you could pretty much also arrive at these fields by having a conversation with ChatGPT. But people who are already aware of what they need and just need the code and logic around it, you could directly start from this prompt, right? So if you look at this prompt, even though it looks very big, here we have actually, I'm using Frappe Framework, and we have created a single doc type called AI chat. I'm writing a form script to customize the behavior of the form of the single doc type. I need a form script that listens to send button click event. The send button is added as a field on the doc type. A doc type name AI chat has field query of type data. So it's basically me, because ChatGPT cannot see the window, right? It cannot see your doc type. So you are just think of it, ChatGPT as a blind assistant that needs to be told, right? Like a screen reader, you're reading everything on the screen. So here what I'm saying is like it has these fields, it's of type that. Then I have a system of type log, of type long text, and so on and so on, right? I have an HTML type field. And then I'm saying on clicking the send button, already added on the doc type, the user input from query field should be taken and sent to the URL. Then I have given the URL. So this URL, I have taken it out of OpenAI's documentation. And I know it requires a API key in the header, right? So I've given the log field initially contains a JSON string. So now this is technical, right? So because we are building a chat thing, you need to have some technical understanding of how chats should be formatted. So you get it from the documentation of any language model you're using. So to break it down, it's not very complicated. You just have to maintain an array of the chats in some place. And every time you have to keep sending that array back to ChatGPT so that it gives you back the response. That should
basically
be
this
it,
is
right?
the memory, right? The memory.
Yeah, so that's the memory in this case. So so here if you see, I have said I need this to be the default value in the when the chat starts. So you have role system content, and then you could see this hash system message. That's just me, right? It's nothing, it's not a standard format or anything. So I wanted the system message to be customizable. You could actually write there you are an helpful assistant and start with it, right? And then you can just, you don't have to change that anymore, and it will always be what you have given. So I wanted that to be controlled from the front end. So I added a token here that could be replaced using a string replace. So if you look at the code, you will know. So even in the next line, I'm saying that this is a placeholder that is replaced with system input field content. The modified log is then used to store conversation with user, and so on and so on, so right. So if you see here, you're giving all the information, including where the where in the response is the message that you are interested in, right? So it's inside the response in choices array in index 0 message, right? So these are all in the documentation. So if you just search OpenAI API REST, you get it. These two things are very straightforward. Actually, we have one more example that uses this. So if you quickly have a look at this, so this is the request. You send the request to this URL. It should have in the header the API key. And then if you look at the response, it's in choices, in message content, right? Choices 0 message content. So it's a pretty complicated use case to start with for people who might be new to this. But the whole idea is like you just gave it few information from that documentation, and it kind of gives you a code, right? It gives you a code. So I'll directly go into our client script here.
So this is the one you pasted from ChatGPT, right?
Yeah. So I would actually give you the link to the shared chat link, ChatGPT link. So you could put it in the description. Because I have 2-3 prompts that I have tested with, and one of it has given the exact code, and I have definitely changed some things here afterwards. But in one chat I have had conversation saying I need the colors to be, so the reason I'm saying okay, this is the one. It's true. So here I have also said text, while the HTML field is updated, the format, each user message should appear on a light blue background, while the AI response should appear on a light green background. Query input field should be cleared after each response, right? So it handles all that here, right? It has the color being alternated for user and AI. It clears the query after the query happens, and all these things are here. So in certain times, sometimes it mess up one line and all. Like sometimes it does a very silly mistake, and you could go and change that. But if you are really, you really want ChatGPT to give you fully working code, you could keep improving this. So what I usually do is like after the first prompt, if there are certain mistakes. So if you see, I will give you a real example. If you can see, we have written like the send button is added as a field on doc type, right? Before I did not have that. So when I did not have that, it started treating send as an action button. It was giving
Okay.
code for action button. So what I did, I came here back, I clicked on edit, and I added that to the context, right? So the whole idea is like you don't have to keep chatting. If you have not got the result, keep editing it. If you are not got the result, keep editing the prompt to get it to a perfect point where it gives you almost what you want, and then you can take it from there. If you're okay, you have enough, you could take it from there, or maybe you could keep editing the prompt to a point where it gave you exactly what you need, right? And then so we have few examples of where we got exactly what we need. So in this case, if you look at the form script that we got from ChatGPT, it's exactly that, right? So I have a key here which I will clear after this session. So you have this system message, replays, and all those things, right? And this is it, right? It's just one client script. So these are not really best
Lost your
practices,
voice.
right?
Wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay. So whatever you're seeing on the screen is not best practices, right? Like you cannot have a key on client script on the front end that is sent through your web browser. That's not secure way to do things. This is just an example. So I actually was able to make ChatGPT create for me a server script, which is an API, and client script. And the server script was taking the key from the site config and then sending it through the client script, right? So, but it was pretty complicated for a session like this. But you could even do that. Like ChatGPT can actually help you to build solution which combines both client script and server script, right? If you're looking at low code implementation. So the whole when we were brainstorming the session thing, like we were talking about like from low code to AI code or from no code to AI code kind of thing, right? Because almost pretty much every code is written by AI in this scenario, right? So the whole idea is like it kind of saves a lot of time, and for people who take a lot of time to code. So I'm not a very hardcore developer. I do a lot of, as I lead a team, I do less code. I read more code review and all those things. So my coding is not very fast now. But with ChatGPT, it's like having a very educated intern for you, right? Like you know what you want, you exactly know what fields you want, you know the architecture, you understand how the system works. So you just explain everything to it and gives you back, right? And sometimes it's also good, like if you're sending a requirement to a developer, sometimes I send them, send it to them along with certain shared links to ChatGPT, which has already have what I require, right? Because I've seen the code, I have prompted it well, and I know exactly what I want, and I give that and ask them to, wrap it in an app and connect it with certain things and integrate and all those things, right? So this is one example, and this is one code that you have seen. Now we will quickly switch to another ERP next instance, and we have again created an imaginary problem here. So if you look at this particular use case, so here again I have went ahead without explaining everything. I've just written Python, Frappe Python framework, ERP next, client script, JavaScript, sales invoice, right? So that's just priming the chat window to scope the answers around this topic. So I have an ERP next website. In it, when a user submits a sales invoice, I want to check if the invoice amount is more than 10,000. If it is higher than 10,000, then check today's day. If the day is not Friday, then ERP Next should show a message for amount larger than 10,000 can only be raised on Fridays, right? Use form script on doc type sales invoice. Actually, I have modified this further to make it more interesting. Then I asked it to change that and say like only finance at Tridz could raise invoice, right? Others cannot raise invoice on other days, right? So it gave me this particular code which takes care of all the details. So it has to do two validation. One, what is the day of the week, and second, what is the current user. And then if the current user is not finance, then it shouldn't allow the invoice to be raised, right? If it's more than 10,000 rupees. So pretty much covers multiple validation, access the value inside invoice, access the current session. So it kind of have certain parts of the code that you might use on day-to-day basis. So again, not a very complicated scenario, but yeah, let's have a quick look. So we'll first ensure the client script is there.
Safwan, can you just zoom in a bit?
Okay. Is it
Yeah,
visible
much
now?
better. Much better. Yeah.
Okay. So just disable this. I think this was it, right? Today,
Yeah.
not equal to. I'm going to initially start with so the current user which is logged in is Safwan at Tridz. So I'm going to change it to finance.tridz. So it shouldn't allow me to create any invoices that is more than 10,000. So let's say just I need an expensive item. So it's 10,001. So it's more than the threshold that we have given it. And the current user is Safwan at Tridz. And as per our code, it has to be finance at Tridz if it's not Friday. So let's see. So if you can see that it's like amount larger than 10,000 can only be raised by finance@tridz.com on days other than Friday, but current user is administrator. So okay, here I'm printing the username and not the email address. But either way, it is sending that notice, right? Now if I change that and say like, so Tridz can raise the invoice, right? And then let's say I might need to reload this. Okay. So, just now it's again 10,001, so it's beyond our threshold. Okay, okay, I think it's not refreshed.
So reload won't work. You have to like refresh the page.
Oh, okay.
So the JavaScript is loaded again. Yeah.
Okay, hopefully this works. Just right.
What is happening?
Okay. How bad? 1 second. If the current user not equal to Safwan Erooth.
So you are logged in as
So
administrator, right? If I see it's like.
yeah, it is administrator, but it was working. No,
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's
You have
try
to
one
log
more
out.
time.
You have to log out, I guess.
You 1 second. Just quickly check this. Or maybe you could give administrator, right? And it should work in the condition, right?
Yeah, yeah.
If that's the case, that's the case. Let's see. See. Okay, I think I'll just do this. We'll not debug this here. We have better interesting things to do. So, but let's try this. Okay. So I need to refresh, right?
Yep.
This code is enabled, right? Yeah, enabled. I hope no other client script is active. Okay, it's not active. Reload again to be sure. Just wait. I think something else is not working. Probably some error, right?
Yeah, let's check. What is it?
X is not defined. Did I make a mistake?
Oh, there is an X. Oh, got it. Line number
Where is it?
15. Line number 15 after the curly brace.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that's why like I feel server scripts are better for validations. I don't know, because then you don't have to reload, right, your doc, and
True,
even
true.
like they work on REST API and stuff. So yeah,
Okay, it got
it
submitted
worked.
without errors, right? So
Awesome.
these are like small things, like where you really don't have to even prompt much, just exactly what you need and all those things. And sometimes I think the real use case is not where you actually copy paste everything from ChatGPT. It's sometimes trying to analyze. So I have a scenario where we had a very complicated Jinja template, which had a lot of repetition and all a lot of these things, and we had to put it out there, and we did not have enough time to from the client because continuous release was happening, and we had to clean it up, right? So we actually pasted the whole Jinja template into this and asked it to suggest ideas. So it automatically picked up all the repetitive templates and made it all template pieces and asked us how to reuse them. So sometimes it's not really about how you generate the whole code from ChatGPT. It's sometimes about parts of the code you could generate, right? Sometimes it's part of the validation that you're doing, or sometimes it's improving the way you have written the code or making it more readable, right? Uh, so I think we pretty much covered client script. So we did two use cases. One was the chat solution that we saw here, and the second one had to do with the quick validation script that we wrote. So this pretty much worked for server script as well. But one of the common problem if you're using free version is sometimes you might have to copy paste some information here. So what I do in the paid version is I give the documentation link. So one pretty neat feature that you have with let's say the paid version of ChatGPT is the possibility of giving a link, right? So I don't know in which page it gives a list of whitelisted functions, right? Uh, that can be used. Yeah. So these are the things, right? So in the restricted Python library, these are the functions that you could use, right? So when prompting ChatGPT, if you are on a paid plan, you could enable plugin and then you could use Web Pilot, for example. Before you had the Bing plugin, which is disabled right now, you could just ask the chat to actually go through it. So in this case, we can say like go through the below URL and help me create a server script for ERP. And you could actually, as I said before, you could actually write all this information here. Framework.
This is the first time I'm seeing this. What do you call? Giving keywords at the start. I have seen like many
It,
prompts on Twitter or like stuff, but
yeah,
yeah.
I think most prompts try to make it look human, right? So I'll just give you an example of why you don't need really complicated prompts to prime it. If we have time, we have an example. It's Frappe books where ChatGPT actually coded a whole new page into Frappe book, adding everything to sidebar and creating a page and all those things from a very small prompt, right? The whole idea is like ChatGPT doesn't need to know like you are a helpful assistant, you are expert in Frappe with 10 years of experience in Python and all those information, right? It is looking for the keyword Python expert and or whatever the keywords you are looking at, right? So in this case, this pretty much works for me. Adding this information here, you could even add any specific methods or thing that you want to use, right? Maybe if you're going to use Frappe.request, for example, right? Even that works. In certain cases, sometimes even the scaffold of the form script, right? If let's say you have this hook in Frappe for workflow, right? Workflow before and workflow after actions. So ChatGPT was not really good at understanding that, and I actually gave it in the prompt itself the format of what are the available hooks, right? And then it started giving me good result, right? So in this case, help me create a server script for ERP next. What do we say, like which requests hello.com /
Hi,
post.
Mohanad Shwiki. We are good. We are good.
Okay.
So
So, and help me
yeah.
create a server script for ERP next, which request hello.com post. Okay, which, let's say, which sends a JSON to using post method. Show the response in Frappe Pro. So because we have the plugin enabled, ideally it will actually browse the documentation page first and try to get a summary of that content and then give you the code. So what happens is, like, if at all something has changed in the documentation, if at all something has improved, or if there a new method was added, something was removed, it will be aware, right? Or else what happened with ChatGPT is, like, it actually responds based on information it had back in 2021, right?
Got it.
So it's adding few contexts, like it should be server script should be enabled inside config and all those things, and then it's giving this. So this is one common mistake I keep getting when using server script. It always imports Frappe, JSON, and all those things. And I have to tell it you don't have to import, right? So these are the
Can't
contexts.
import.
Yeah, it's already Frappe is already in the context, right? So, but a lot of time this works. So one good thing about this is, like, imagine you are working with a particular library that has just been released in Python and it has a documentation. Let's say you are working with OpenAI itself, right? And you have the documentation of OpenAI Python. If you give that context to ChatGPT, what happens is, like, ChatGPT has all the information on Python already. It knows all the best practices of Python, if not all, a lot more than you in many cases, right? It know how to write really good code, and the only context that ChatGPT is missing is the latest documentation for OpenAI, right? Then the kind of output it gives when you give it access to that documentation is really, really good. Or if you're really lazy, let's not talk about how good, but you can think about how fast, right? Because you having to go through the documentation and then coming up with the code, instead of that you could just give it to it, because you don't have much to earn by learning how the OpenAI API documentation works, right? Or how this thing works. So I'll just give you another quick example. Let's try this. So previously I have tried it with another example, wherein let's try to understand how the real-time framework in Frappe Framework works, right? So Frappe Framework has a real-time functionality which uses Socket.io, and it has an implementation in JavaScript, and also it has an implementation in Python, which communicate with this Socket.io using Redis as the interface, right? So that's my limited understanding of how it works. And we will try to understand the implementation. Let's say you have a requirement where you have to dive pretty deep into the real-time implementation. So this requires you to have some understanding of the code base. So here what we're trying to do is, like, we don't want to go through everything and try to read all the code. So we want ChatGPT to first understand how all these things work. So here what I'm doing is, like, I know exactly 3 places where this is implemented, right? So basically in it, it has the method for real time. It should say it
Publish
have
real
real
time.
time, publish real time and publish progress, right? So you have 2 functions here, publish progress and publish real time. And then you have a realtime.py file, and then you have a folder in the root which implements the JavaScript code, right? So let's take it step by step. So we will maybe give this code, and so some of the people who are listening might have even better workflows to do this. I'll just do what I do mostly. So what I usually do is, like, I say, like, go through. So sometimes this doesn't work. So you actually have to go to the row mode because GitHub requires these pages to be authenticated.
Oh, got it.
Some pages to be authenticated. So just open the raw code file for both. And in this case, let's say, hopefully it doesn't hit the context limit. So right now you are giving ChatGPT some code to read and understand.
Neat trick, by the way. Sorry. So you give the
Yeah,
raw.
yeah.
So you go ahead, read the code, and explain to me.
Yeah,
So this can
understand
be
it and then give
really,
me.
yeah, really useful in case there is like you are not able to find documentation on a certain topic and this
True,
kind
true.
of stuff. Yeah,
And it could also be a very neat tool to generate documentation or the first draft of documentation, right? For the areas that is not covered for
makes
documentations.
sense.
So go through the code below, which are part of, let's say, Frappe framework, a Python based framework. I'm just going to write like that. I'm not going to optimize any of these. Python based framework. These files implements real communication. Okay. Understand the code and non-respond. Wait for more information. Only respond when. Sometimes you have to write more than this to stop it from responding, right? ChatGPT is very talkative. And the reason why you really don't want ChatGPT to respond has to do with the limited tokens that you can have in the whole conversation, right? So you really don't want it to give you information that you don't want, so that you can keep it as summarized as possible, right? So I really want to give the JavaScript codes as well. So that's the reason I have asked it to not respond yet. So let's see what happens if it will listen to us. So now, okay, I think I'll just stop this here. And we are using the wrong plugin. You really don't have to do a web browsing here. You could actually use the code plugin. I really forgot. We'll use this one. I think I should copy the previous chat. It actually gives a better result. Before those plugin was published, code files. In this case, you really didn't require the raw files as well. You could actually have the real code. Let's see. Almost missed it.
So yeah, maybe two ways to do it, right? Either you use the web browsing plugin, but I guess this will give better results
Yeah,
because it is
it
made
gives
for,
better result.
yeah, it's specifically made for GitHub repositories.
But yeah. So and again, it's all trial and error. This keeps changing. There are a lot of plugin here, and it keeps changing. So I had something called Repo Radar or something which was really good, which I used previously, but it kind of, the plugin ecosystem is yet not really stable. The people who implements it, who doesn't maintain it, so it's always finding the right plugin. So there are 2-3 plugins that access GitHub, so you could actually maybe try it out in 2-3 tabs and see which one gives you better result, right? But usually most of it works, and it's always better than you going through the code and spending many hours. It kind of summarizes everything and give it to you. So let's try again with the code plugin, and let's hope it accesses the code plugin itself, right? Not the web plugin. Okay, it's using the ask code itself, right? So it's accessing those files. Let's hope it doesn't respond before we give it more context. So while it is at it, let's go and find out the WebSocket implementation. So if you go So root of Frappe application, you can see a real-time folder here. So my understanding is this is where the real-time WebSocket server is implemented. So those links, I don't know which links it's not able to access. You should thoroughly understand. So as I said, this plugin is not able to get that information right now, right?
File does not exist. What?
I think this is actually accessing an older cached version or something. Let's try another, quickly try one more plugin. So we'll just copy this. I have certain things which already tested, some outputs that I already got. So if at all this doesn't work, we can quickly go to that. Let's say repo inspector was good, but let's see something else here. We'll use the repo inspector and see what happens. This had gone offline few times, so I don't know if this was the best I have got so far. But over time it was not working. Because as you are aware, like the developer of the plugin has to maintain the infrastructure for this. And right now it's not monetized, right? There are certain plugins that are trying to give you subscription and all, but in this case it's not monetized. So they might have some future plans. Hopefully this is working. So this plugins have to clone the repo into their server and then go to those files and analyze it.
So in the meantime, there was a question in the chat. If user questioned out of prediction, how do you tackle? I don't know.
No, I did not get the question.
Yeah, me too. Can you elaborate, Jivitesh?
Okay.
Yeah. So now I just realized why my the stuff got cut out and like the setup is broken, because like since the primary camera I have is my phone, and there are some presets that it activates to blur and to zoom and to maintain, like to apply its own filters, right? That messes up the whole thing. So I forgot to disable it before the stream.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe later.
Okay, I think it is saying it has went to the code, though I'm not able to see the response it got here. Usually you see the response as well. So let's hope it has got it, right? And we will give it some more information. Let's say also go to the codes in below path. So ideally, I wouldn't suggest giving a. I'm just going to do this now, but ideally, I suggest giving it the exact file names to audit. Give the list of files you want it to audit instead of asking it to figure out what, right? Or you create a summary of what is there in the JavaScript implementation of real-time API implementation in another chat window. And just paste a summary here, right? I'll show you how small that summary can be. After you understand the implementation, wait for my query. Don't give any explanations. So let's see what's happening here. So it's looking for the folder path real time. Meanwhile, I think we will open the next tab. And okay. So this is one example of something that has successfully worked, what we're trying to do. In this case, I have given it a repository, Frappe books, and I asked it to actually understand the books, how the code is organized, what is the tech stack, how is the application built, and so that I can plan. So here I have used something called recombinant, right? I think it doesn't exist anymore. So it kind of first understood all this information. The reason I asked it to understand the code was because I was too lazy to write it down myself. Because the moment it reads all the tech stack and everything, it's basically priming the tool to develop the code based on these informations, right? What are the libraries used, what are the framework, what is the CSS framework, and all those things, right? And then until you are fully clear on
This is cool.
right? So here again, it's going through all these things, and it gave a summary of everything, right? Where all the major fault codes are organized, it's under FIO, SRC schemas, backend, and all those things, right? Now I have asked it specifically. Now I'm getting specific because I know what I need. So can you look at the content of directories, source model, utils, and schemas, and FIO, and figure out how I can add a link on the sidebar to open new invoice page? Don't give any explanation description until you have the answer. I don't need to know anything else, right? So it explores everything, and it gives you the pages are added in pages, and you have roto.ts, right? And to add, you have to add this and all those things, right? So I understood it missed two things. So sidebar config. So I asked it to look at these two things, right? Sidebar.view and sidebar config.ts. And finally, it made all those things. So this is the most important part of everything. So until now, we are exploring the code and teaching ChatGPT to understand how a particular thing works. And now I'm asking it to summarize what you have found out until now using least number of characters, not for human reading, but for sharing back to you in future. Ensure you put basic details on the key stack used, and ensure you include all details related to sidebar you found out. To save token char count, don't use new line, bullet, or numbered list. Grammar that is needed for human understanding. Focus on just giving info that is needed for ChatGPT to understand, right? So it gave me a summary of everything in just 4 lines, right? Just
Okay.
comma separated values. And then I asked it to add some more information to that, right? So I wanted it to add information related to that, and it gave me another summary here. So this is my final summary, which has 5 lines of code. And then using that 5 line of code, so now you have, as long as you have the access to GitHub plugin and you have ChatGPT Plus, that summary is all that you need to do anything related to that. So in this case, I want to build a page in Frappe book and add it to sidebar. That is my context, right? So this is all the summary required for ChatGPT to do that for you. So in this case, you're telling it which repository and what files, right? It has to look at and giving the steps required. And then I have given a prompt after the summary. Add a page with 2 input, 1 select box, drop down, and 1 button with label calculate. Drop down will have option add, subtract, multiply, and divide. When user click button, it will apply the operation selected in the select box on the number got from the input. Show the result in a div below the button. Use material design and add page to sidebar with name calculator. So this is the prompt, right? And it actually works. Everything, right? Whatever it gives now exactly works. It's telling you to create a calculator.view file in source pages, and then it gives you the code for that, and then give you a route page, what to add to the router, what to add to the sidebar config. That's it, right? Give me styling needed for material design. I asked for styling, it gave me the styling. So that's it. In the end, let's go back to the original query we were looking at. I will show you the. I'll try to load the Frappe book page that was created using this prompt, and it pretty much worked. It added a left item on the left sidebar to Frappe books, and then it added a page with calculator in it, right? So it was just by a conversation with ChatGPT, by giving it access to GitHub and allowing it to understand a particular part of the application. So here we were trying to create okay, going through. So now let's ask it to summarize. Can you summarize your understanding on how real time is implemented in Frappe based on what you saw? has seen the code, hopefully it will have the answer. So you could see it like a documentation now, right?
Awesome.
So this now you could actually ask it to give you an example of or ask it to look for code patterns or even write some code for you. So one real use case I had was I had a person asking how can I add a new field to sign up, or how can I customize the sign up form of Frappe, and I knew LMS Jannat has done something in LMS. So what I did was like I gave ChatGPT access to 1 second. Yeah, so I gave ChatGPT access to the LMS code, and then I gave exactly the hooks, the code when she has written that, and then asked it to write a documentation around it. So I could send it to, because this was a intern. You are aware of Finger Space, right? Finger Hub.
Tinker yeah.
Yeah, so this was a student from Tinker Hub who was trying to build a site for Tinker Hub events. So this is the documentation based on those exploration, right? I send it to them, right?
So it was generated by ChatGPT.
This was generated by ChatGPT.
Awesome.
So it's a Frappe framework where the login is implemented, but where is the client side logic implemented in LMS? How it is overridden, right? Where all you have to look the hooks, user py, and new sign up.html, right? And insights and extending backend logic overrides, client side logic, and hooks. So this kind of helped them to solve that problem, right?
Awesome.
So here, me having to go through all of that was harder, but it was easy for me to figure it out and then give it to ChatGPT and then give it back to you, right? I think I will show the Frappe books page, and then maybe we could take questions, and I think we have covered a lot.
Sure, sure.
We have, I think I covered everything, I guess. Yeah. So I'll just quickly open my Frappe book implementation. Just let me know if you can see.
Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah. So this is the calculator page. So we have not added any header or anything, but this was exactly the code that was given by ChatGPT, which added a calculator item to the sidebar of Frappe. It added the text box you asked for and the actions, right? Multiply. You got the result here, right? So I have not. So this is something where even if you don't understand exactly how, so for anyone who know what Frappe book is and you have seen the code, Frappe book code is not very simple, right? It's pretty much complicated for people who have not worked on Vue.js and who have not worked on Electron and who don't understand how the code is structured and who doesn't understand packages. So there's a lot of things going on, right? You have Vue application. It's a Vue application. It's an Electron application. You have Frappe.js. You have all the Frappe.js specific models and schemas. And on top of that, you have all the logic which is inside FIO, right? So to that point, you could actually prime this to a point where you can have summary of, if you are talking from a Frappe perspective, you could actually create a lot of summary for yourself like this. So I could actually ask this to do the same thing that it did with the Frappe books code, summarize everything it understood for later use, and then keep it, as a bookmark. And every time I need to do something, I could actually ask it to start from there. I could give it a summary. Let's say I have a summary for real time, I have a summary for doc type, I have a summary for client script. So you keep summaries which is primed for those information along with the link to the source code where those particular functions and classes are implemented. It can be a really handy thing for you, like when you're trying to generate some code or when you're trying to understand. So one very cool use case that has worked really for me has to do with understanding the code base. So initially Frappe's code base might look really complicated and really huge. It has been built over like 16 years or something, right? So it's very hard to process it, understand it. But taking ChatGPT, as you said, Kik, and allowing it to go through the codes and you understanding which part of the code are associated with that and giving that context to ChatGPT can really help you speed up the whole process. I think we could directly go to any questions that anyone would have on this regard.
Folks, you can ask your question in the chat.
Ask for a summary for the previous one as well. Let's put this whole thing to the real time as well.
Can you maybe create a GitHub gist or something with some stuff, and then we can share that gist link in the description after the
Yeah, that can be done.
yeah, after the stream. Yeah.
So here is the summary, right? Next time, if you put this summary along with the GitHub repository code, it should work.
So
Yeah.
Dirk Vendor asks interesting one. Do you
Yeah.
credit ChatGPT or add a disclaimer that it came from ChatGPT? For example, when you share gist with customer or colleagues.
Yeah, I actually tell them, most of the people, when I'm giving them the information, I actually tell them the workflow, how I generated that, and I motivate them to do that. So you could say like I am an advocate of or a brand ambassador for OpenAI. I keep telling everyone to take the ChatGPT Plus. And the reason I tell them like it's the 2,000 rupees that you pay, you will save it like within 3 days, right? If you are someone who's developing and if this is something you do a lot, because you really don't have to be the one who reads through the documentation and for everything, right? You really sometimes for one-off integration, you really don't have to go through everything, or sometimes you could summarize a few documentation together and for example, like we developed a solution called, it was in the media coverage in Malayalam medias. We built a AI platform which could use any Indian language as a prompt for generating AI arts, right? And mostly I might have to credit everything to ChatGPT in that case. The stability AI APIs, replicate APIs and everything. We were just feeding in the documentation to ChatGPT, getting the out, and then we exactly tell them what libraries to use and all those things. So we knew exactly what we want. We knew what library we are interested in using. We knew we need Axios in the front end. We knew we are using Firestore as a prototype. So you keep feeding this information to ChatGPT, keep optimizing the prompt, and this windows are shared, and then you have this developed in any time, right? So it's basically like you have like each ChatGPT windows are your interns, and you have 2 developers just prompting and assembling those codes that the interns are giving you to an application, right? So actually the site is online in indicai.in, but it's in a waiting list right now because Razorpay has blocked our payment gateway. So the idea was to give a very, very cost-effective AI platform where you could even start with 10 rupees and then prompt in any language. So it was really, really interesting to see what people are doing. Like people are giving proverbs in Malayalam and getting out of that, right? Like very interesting proverbs. And we have given some examples in Hindi and English and Malayalam on the homepage, but with some of which people have generated, right? And we have done some prompt engineering there. But the whole idea is like, I don't think we could have built something like that pre-ChatGPT in the time we actually built it, right? It was a side project. It was a project with a lot of volunteers involved, in the sense like we have a product designer who is from another company. We had a front-end developer who was working on another project, and I was the one who was guiding them around, giving certain things, and we built the whole thing up, right? And then it's a working SaaS product. And if you look at the whole number of days spent on that, it might be few days, right? Maybe 1 week at top, right? I don't think that was possible before, right? Before ChatGPT. To coming to the credit, I think I do keep telling people on that, but I think that's a good idea to write down in the gist as well, right? So I publish all my gist in public. Whatever, even for my documentation, whatever I get, I publish it publicly, so that someone else could, because I often stumble upon things which have been like in gist by someone, and it saves us a lot of time, right? We had an experience for a UPI application. So Hussain might remember in the last conference we spoke of a UPI application, right? We had a very interesting scenario where we were finding UPI QR codes which did not have the UPI format, right? And it was gibberish, and you couldn't understand what it was, and it was all over the place. Most of the merchants, petrol bunks were having this, and we had no clue. And then we figured out there is something called Bharat Pay, which has a different standard for merchants, and it's not a UPI standard. And then it uses some kind of encoding, like email encoding, right? It has certain characters for separation, and also there's no documentation at all. And we found out a JavaScript library in GitHub on Gist, a code someone has shared, and it worked for us. We used it, and
that's the beauty of open source, right? So
correct. So I keep publishing whatever I find out on Gist, just like that. I add some documentation around it, but it's a good idea. Who suggested this? Adding this information on that?
Dirk Vendor. Most probably I'm pronouncing his name wrong, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a good input, right? Like this came from ChatGPT, right? Even for people who are using it to train data, maybe need to know that.
Cool. So one question: can you share the chat in ChatGPT after you finish? Okay, that we can take from Safwan.
Yeah, I'll do that today, probably today night. I'll figure out the best chats I have for Frappe books. Even for the code that we did, right? I had multiple chats where I was prompting, so I really don't know which one was the final one. But I'll share everything, maybe, right? Maybe we'll create gist and just have everything compiled somewhere. And
that will be awesome.
Should be good. Yeah. And just to add, ChatGPT is not the only chat client we can use this for. The only reason I'm using ChatGPT a lot, because that's the only chat client that I'm aware of which has plugins, right? Where you could do this in a very simple way. I have got better results for Python and all on Bard at times. I have got some good result with Bing AI as well. So Bing is again almost same as ChatGPT, but a bit different, right? Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll proceed to wrap. Let's see. Cool. If there are no questions, we can wrap it up. Thanks, Safwan, for joining in. Thanks for the initiative as well, that you thought of educating on AI plus Frappe. So yeah, I think it was a nice session, and people will find it useful, and we have some asset for this, right?
Yeah.
For later on sharing with others. Cool. So that's how like most folks are finding build with Hussain these days. So people share it, the links that okay, watch this particular episode or watch this one for this. I find like people sharing on Twitter as well as this discuss forum we have. Cool.
I think you have voted the most, and one category you have voted the most, right? For the next
I haven't
conference.
checked that. Yeah. So I haven't checked that vote yet. So I
Okay.
checked it on the day it was posted. So Rushabh posted it, I guess. Where
Yeah,
is it?
correct.
Couldn't find it now. Yeah, but it's like thanks guys for voting me and nominating me there. So Kuni Mohammed asks, there is any chance for creative AI?
I don't know what he means by that.
Creative AI, I guess like image generation and so on. Is that right, Kuni?
The product which I was referring to, IndicAI.in, does that. It's basically built around stable diffusion. So whatever we did, we were connecting to OpenAI's APIs, right? You could just replace that with any stable diffusion APIs or any image generative image APIs, and you could pretty much do the same thing, right? You could actually it's pretty easy to use these APIs now. You just send the prompt and you get the image back, right? And a lot of sites like Replicate, there is a site called Replicate, which hosts a lot of APIs or models on generative AI related to image. And they have very simple way of connecting. You just exactly how we did, right? You just pass the key and just communicate with the endpoint and you get the image back. So pretty much you could maybe give the documentation or the code to ChatGPT and have it coded here. So I actually did a demo of that in OpenAI conference, but there is something the chat window you saw, right? Something similar, which had to do with drawing the sketch of a suspect, right? Using stable diffusion. So it had some interest. It got some media coverage in some Malayalam newspapers. And we also got invitation from an IPS officer in Andhra Pradesh
Awesome.
to explore some tech, right? So we introduced them to Frappe in that event, and we showed them how Frappe could be a quick low-code solution to build solution around these AI models and all.
Awesome. Cool. Hi Hussain, I have some issues while developing doctor appointment. Can we connect after some time? Yeah, drop me an email at hussain@frappe.io and we can connect. Does that work, Siva? Cool. Awesome. So yeah, we'll end it here for today. Where did Safwan go? Maybe he lost his internet connection, but it was end anyways. And yeah, I don't know, my scenes are messed up today, as you can see. Let me just turn off video effects, and now you can see my table. That's fine. So before I go, okay, I will fix it later, but for now, yeah. So I got this error. Yeah, Safwan
I
is
lost
back.
my connection in between. Yeah.
Cool. I was fixing the camera for me. So yeah,
Okay.
Siva, we can chat there. Cool. Yeah, goodbye, guys. See you on Wednesday. And I'll be joined by Rohit from our ERP Next team. And he's going to delve us deeper into customizations in ERP Next and Frappe. So yeah, do join in. Like the first session we had with Mayank was like basic customization over ERP Next. This one will be even more deeper than that. So yeah, once again, thanks Safwan for joining in, and
Thank you for having me.
have a nice day. Have a nice day, everyone, and goodbye. And let's end the broadcast.